¿Y a dónde miramos? Okay. Interesting. Right, Juan Rodrigo? Interesting. Like 15, 20 now.
Listo.
I think they should come closer because they're gonna see that we're, you know, talking to empty chairs. I don't think that it's used. No? You can get closer. Yeah, so we can just. Yeah. Thanks
like our
God.
students in
Thanks
class.
God our voices are.
Always want to sit in the back.
We have high pitches.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to this presentation. On behalf of the Master's Program in Foreign Language Teaching and Learning, I'm very happy to present our two speakers today. They are Dr. Liliana Cuesta and Dr. Mickey Marcy. They are going to speak about COIL, which is a very innovative kind of methodology. Okay, thank you very much, and go ahead, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, everybody, for the invitation to Jorge and his team. It's always nice to see friends and colleagues, and I'm very happy and thrilled to be with my colleague in this opportunity, Dr. Mickey Marcy. So nice to see you all, and I let Mickey say hello to everybody as well.
Hi, everyone. I just, first of all, want to thank you for allowing me to visit your beautiful campus. I'm falling in love with the area. So thank you for the opportunity to share this with you. I'm looking forward to talking with you more today about it.
Okay, so we're going to go with the introduction. This is a topic that has been in our agenda, in our mind, for about 2 years, but it doesn't, you know, involve that this topic has not been highly discussed, I would say. And I start with the initiating debate and the intriguing debate that COIL is at a renaissance point here in Colombia, as it is in many places in the United States, as you will hear Mickey addressing some of the things that she has vastly worked on. So a little bit of the rationale for this talk. So we're going to be talking about COIL, virtual exchanges, opportunities, perspectives, and the alignments that we have to do and make in our curriculum. We're going to bring you to different ideas related to possible action plans that you can do in your, and I know that the people from the audience is very well versed, and actually they work in several institutions. So I think that this is also, we think that this is a wonderful opportunity to take and include this in your agendas as well. And naturally, we will leave the audience with some concluding remarks and a debate in the field. As I said before, we have been discussing the importance of this topic, and I think I see that a lot of the people in the audience are researchers. I think that this is a topic that should be included not only at in the research agenda, in the outreach agenda of the universities, but also in the teaching agenda, you know, that we have as teachers have to cover these 3 different fields. I know that we can say, let's blame it to COVID and everything is just not due to COVID, but among these outbursts of challenges, COVID also brought us opportunities. And one of these opportunities is the increased mobility, the increase in mobility services, inbound and outbound. All of the things that you see on the screen, you're having one of the latest UNESCO reports on virtual mobility, is going to also give you a little bit of a theoretical and perhaps practical approach to this field, those of you who are very interested in that. So one of the intriguing ideas for us to leave you today is like, okay, this is the debate, what's happening? COIL was first coined by the SUNY Institute, right? But then there are many opportunities, as you will hear my colleague speaking in a minute, that have been derived from there. But in Colombia, if we situate the matter, as we tend to do it when we are analyzing phenomena in research, and we have our wonderful students out back, we need to see this as an opportunity to start doing things in the classroom, as we said, and also see what's happening with these phenomena in the agenda of our research endeavors.
So here's an example shot of one of our virtual exchange classes one day. As you can see, it's a wonderful opportunity to meet some of those challenges with mobility. As Liliana did in providing a little bit of our positioning, I thought before I start talking and explaining a little bit about virtual exchange, I would also bring a little bit more of our positioning to the table. We both see virtual exchange as basically a foundation on which students can begin to build their cultural experiences. Needless to say, the opportunity to study abroad, of course, is the ideal. But we also know a very small percentage of students are able to do that for a variety of challenges and variables. But virtual exchange allows them to start building on that cultural experience foundation. We both certainly agree that a global experience should be an equitable opportunity, it should be diverse, it should be inclusive, and it should be financially sustainable. And that's one of the pieces that virtual exchange brings to the table for students to still gain an opportunity to establish a global experience. The other thing that virtual exchange will offer is the opportunity for students to do this in a safe space. In other words, through virtual exchange, they're often doing it at home. If they're doing it, from their computer, they're able to do it while still having those connections with their university. And they're also using a technology that most of them are comfortable and familiar with. This helps reduce some of the anxiety that a cultural in-person experience can bring. And anytime our students are in the position to these days have a lot of communication, it helps with their sense of well-being. And when they successfully participate, it also helps to empower them and their ability to see that they can do this. It also brings about a huge amount of self-awareness in that they can see not only areas for improvement, but the successes that they have enjoyed in that intercultural communication experience. So let's go ahead and get down a little bit to what actually is virtual exchange. Has anybody here participated or taught using virtual exchange? Okay, so for some of you, this is familiar, and I apologize to anybody where this is maybe repetitive, but this helps to kind of get us all on the same page with the same definitions. So this is from Robert O'Dowd, one of the main researchers with virtual exchange, and as he explains, virtual exchange involves the engagement of a group of learners in an extended period of online intercultural interaction. So this is not a one-time meet. And collaboration with partners, so they're not siloed from each other, and as an integrated part of their educational curriculum, not something that's happening outside, and under the guidance of an educator or a facilitator. Next. You can see not only have there been different names for virtual exchange, it's also been called telecollaboration. There are also different attributes, video conference dialogues, paired courses. Sometimes they involve pitch competitions, project-based learning. So there are a lot of aspects to what virtual exchange can bring and what it can involve. Next, please. These are what are identified as some of the important attributes of virtual exchange. Number one, the fact that it's sustained. So students, again, are meeting over a long period of time. Most of the ones that I have participated in have been anywhere from 4 or 5 weeks to as many as 12. So again, it's that sustained interaction that they have with one another. It's also technology enabled. Obviously, they're doing it through the computer, but they also will learn some additional platforms, maybe WhatsApp, maybe Microsoft Teams, maybe Padlet, if you use something like that. So they're going to be able to use a variety of technologies, some of which they might not be familiar with. So that just increases their skills and ability in that area. Of course, it's people to people, right? We're bridging those cultural differences and opportunities for them to work together. It's facilitated. So while I'm not sure you guys can see it behind, but it's also, there we go, learner-led. So the idea that students are leading the experience, right? It's their opportunity to explore the issues that are important for them, to do the research that is important to them, lead the production. However, it's also facilitated, right? As an instructor, we're acting as the guide, as the coach, helping them through that process. Next, please. And of course, the most wonderful role of virtual exchange is the fact that it structures mutual understanding. And again, enabling that ability to grow in their global context. Next, please. I think you need to hit it one more time to bring up the other piece. Oh, a couple of times, I think. I don't know why we have that in there.
Yeah, we'll have to do the animation. Yeah, the animation.
I'm not animated enough. Another wonderful attribute, of course, in engaging in a virtual exchange. For example, I actually show my students how to include that in their resume so that they can demonstrate that they have gained some global awareness and intercultural, multicultural interaction.
That's a great tip.
Yeah,
indeed.
it's nice.
That's a great tip. That's so we can keep it in mind so we can tell our students. Just think of that. Yeah.
And I think there's about 5 more, just so you know. But it does bring a lot of career workplace readiness skills. They're going to be engaging in teamwork and leadership, experiential learning, problem solving, which is what so many employers are looking for, not just the ability to regurgitate knowledge, but to actually use it in different circumstances and overcome that, which includes things like adaptability, of course, empathetic listening, so that when you're in a team context, you're able to hear the partners that you're working with, being an active listener, and then of course, an appreciation for multiple perspectives. The workplace, no matter where you are, is not just one type of person anymore, right? It's multiple people. So these skills, even if you are in a homogeneous situation, are still very practical skills just for being a career-ready person. Next, please. There we go. So there are different ways that you can engage in virtual exchange in the classroom. And some of you, it sounds like, have already tried some of these. My experience has been with either third-party facilitators and of course the COIL that we've been engaging in. Next one, please. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the third-party facilitators, and we also have a short list of some ones that are, as Colombian institutions are ready-made, so to speak. So third-party facilitators are usually a company or nonprofit organization that has a prepared curriculum, usually, to help guide you as the facilitator and the students through a project-based learning. It also will often provide facilitators with some training. Again, usually typically 4 to 10 weeks. One of the ones I participated in was 12 weeks. Unfortunately, many of these often come with a small cost. So they're, depending on your funding sources, it's not always a sustainable solution for long term. Now, 2 that I have worked with have been Celia Connect, which is an 8-week virtual exchange between students in the US and students in MENA countries, the Middle East and Northern African countries. They had guided discussions once a week for 2.5 hours for 8 weeks. Some of the drawbacks of this particular program is that the instructor is not involved. They have trained facilitators, mediators, who engage the students in their dialogues. And as the instructor, I just receive feedback on their participation. And then of course, I also get to see their small projects that they do during that time. But it is a great way for a beginner to get involved in that process and see their students engage in an intercultural opportunity. It takes very little time away from your normal curriculum. But again, it kind of gets your feet wet a little bit in that world. The other one I've participated in is IREC's Global Solutions Sustainable Business Challenge. They also have a 5-week program that's called the Conversations program, which is very nice as well. This is a 6 or 10-week virtual exchange. Your class is paired, or my class was paired with another instructor either in Jordan or Iraq. Students engaged in a curriculum that led them through the process of identifying a UN sustainability goal, identifying a problem in their communities, choosing the one that they wanted to work with, and then researching it, providing a solution, creating a business report, and then a pitched video for their problem and solution, a little like Shark Tank, right? They usually had discussion roughly once per week. They had some other secured online programs. The beauty of this one is there's no cost, and instructors get some wonderful training opportunities to learn how to be facilitators. It's one of my favorite programs. They do an amazing job. They are associated with the Stevens Institute, who does multiple virtual exchange programs. Next one, please. Now, these are some of the additional resources that are readily available to institutions in Colombia. So Vamos, which is, again, I've said this already, it's my favorite title of all of the virtual exchanges, virtual exchange to tackle wicked problems. And this is a exchange between Latin American countries and European countries. The University of Florida also has a wonderful program engaging with Latin American and South American institutions and universities to develop a variety of virtual exchange programs, including COIL, and United Planet Virtual Exchange, which also provides a variety of opportunities. The nice thing is with some of these, even if there is a small fee, oftentimes once you get going, and I hope they don't watch this YouTube video.
No, on the contrary, we need the authorities to watch this this debate so they can invest in virtual exchange opportunities and mobility services. Don't worry, this is an open space, so we can talk.
Next, please.
And then
take it away, my partner.
There you go. Okay, so a good thing, as Mickey was saying before getting into COIL, is to analyze each one of these opportunities and see what would be your perfect match, right? And which are the ones that best suit your interests and the interests naturally of your institution. So generally, when we are talking about virtual exchange, when we're talking about COIL, there has to be an alignment between your institution and naturally your goals as an individual, as a person, as a researcher, as an enthusiast of virtual exchange. So let's talk a little bit about collaborative online international learning. As Mickey was saying before, naturally, you see virtual exchange like the macro concept. Within it, there is a little branch. We always want to get metaphorical, right, Mickey? And picture this like a tree. One of the branches is COIL. As I was telling you before, COIL was not a topic in our agenda, like as a term, talking about, you know, the terminology itself, like perhaps 2 or 3 years ago. But now, as I said at the beginning, in a little bit of our positioning, it is already in the agenda of all of the universities. We have been naturally at my university with Mickey's visit this week, and we visited Nacional University, and naturally I couldn't leave the opportunity to visit you guys and talk about these things that are on the academic debate and a recent academic debate. And it's not only a trend. Let's take a little bit out of that simplistic concept. So what does COIL do? In essence, it connects students and professors, yeah, from different contexts. The term is basically self-explanatory, right? There are thousands of opportunities for global experiences, and you can map, and the beauty of this COIL program is that you can basically, as we say with Mickey, customize it to your best needs. So if you want a COIL program of 4 weeks, or 5 weeks, or 6 weeks, or 16 weeks, well, go make it, right? Go make it a reality. In our COIL, which we will be referring to at a later point in our conversation, we design a COIL of 8 weeks, okay, which we will address later. And as Mickey said, it provides universities and schools, perhaps we have to add the word schools. I know if it is at the universities restricted, and yet in terms of the knowledge, imagine at the school level, I don't think that it has permitted. I was talking with Bound International, which is was our third partner. And I was, by the way, talking to Karen, and she said that they have been trying to make alliances with institutions at the school level, and it's yet a starting opportunity. So if I have in the, in the viewers that I know that we are transmitting live, or if we have anybody in the audience interested to do research or do outreach programs at schools, this would be a fantastic opportunity to consider. Yeah, it's good. So basically, you want to go ahead with that one? Or yeah, it's me. Okay, good. So as you see, in this case, two institutions get together, right? As Miki was saying, perhaps with the help of a third party, it could also happen. And it's recommended, it's not that it is not possible if the third party institution doesn't take a leading role. It's okay, you can still do it, but you will need a little bit of, perhaps yesterday, as we were talking with my friends at the university, you will need a little bit of a mentoring or mentoring from other people who have already engaged in virtual exchanges. So as you see, it is very self-explanatory, University 1, University 2, or institutions. In my case, or in our case, Miki comes from a college, from a community college in Arizona, and I am, at the Universidad de La Sabana, a university. So we make agreements. Let's put it in very simplistic way so we can accelerate the debate. We co-teach, we co-design, we co-evaluate, we co-assess, and naturally we were at the beginning trained by Bound International. Miki knows the statistics. She's better with numbers than myself. So Miki, what was that?
So Bound, first of all, I have to say, did an amazing job with our training. It was a very gracious and extensive training. We met 4 times, once a week for 4 weeks, and it was a 2.5-hour training each time. In addition to that, as Liliana mentioned, we were also offered a coach to mentor us through that process, who was in the same discipline that we were. So again, they did an amazing job.
Yeah, they did.
With what they had to offer. And they also offered additional training throughout the summer that we were doing our work together. That was optional, that you could attend if you wanted to learn some more technology based or things like specific terms, like how to handle racism in the classroom, or these types of things as they may come up.
Intercultural topics.
Exactly.
The training cover from content, intercultural diversity topics to technical issues for those of, in our case, we were a little bit versed in technology matters, but there were other people in the training that were not. So they made sure that they cover all. So basically, this is kind of an agreement. It's one of these projects that works without a lot of bureaucracy. That's why we are also bringing it to the agenda. It doesn't mean that it could be extended to a macro project at the universities, but it could initiate as easy as, 2 instructors from different places of the world putting together, making agreements. And then naturally, there are the evaluation systems are not, let's say, invaded, right? I don't have to give credits in Miki's institution. Miki doesn't have to give credit to my students. So it is a very fruitful, I would say, academic partnership. Naturally, if we could portray this in a pyramid, the next level would be just to move it up to the institutional level so they can make the macro agreements, which is one of the stages in which we are now at our universities. So just a little bit of, a little bit of geographical culture, I would say. Chia, Colombia with Arizona, Chandler, Arizona, United States. This is, these are the 3 icons of the 3, the icons of the 3 participant institutions. Again, Bound participated in the first iteration of the course, which happened that was fall, right? And now ourselves, without the help of Bound, designed and are about to start. Next week, we start the course, by the way. As soon as she hops on the plane to Arizona and I return on Sunday to Bogota, we'll have to start the adventure, right?
Yes.
So the course starts next week, and it is the second iteration. And I'm very happy to see one of our former students in the course, Miss Monica Betancourt here. Monica, it's lovely to see you around here. Monica can tell if this worked or not. You can just raise your hand and say, no, you're lying. No, I'm kidding. Okay, good. So let's go with the next. Thank you. Our students, Mickey is great in portraying actually, you see Monica. Monica, are you in the picture? No, perhaps we didn't shoot that picture of you. Yeah, there you go. Monica's there. She, I wasn't lying. Don't think that I made Monica come especially for this presentation. Okay, I'll introduce my Colombian students. Of course, Edilberto Pineda. We love Edilberto. Edilberto is placed in Yopal. Remember that my master's program is an online program. One of the two masters that it's offered. It's an online program, 2-year program. Edilberto is based in Yopal. Sara Isabel Montoya, another grade of our students. She was based in Barichara. I know that she moved somewhere else in the Santander region. And then we have Monica. Monica, you were, you continue being in Medellin naturally, right? Yeah, she was in. Yes, Alberto. So if you couldn't hear Monica, I don't know how the sound is for the ones that are listening to us. Monica was in Sevilla. That was it. Sevilla, Antioquia, right? No, but in Sevilla Valle. And Alberto, the one below Mickey's picture, Alberto is another of our great students. We happen to have a wonderful group of students. He was multiculturally and actively diverse. Alberto is from Venezuela, studies with us, but he's living and working at a multinational company in Peru. I'll let Mickey introduce her students.
Well, maybe instead of introducing them individually, because I had about twice as many students, it might be helped to characterize our campus. So Chandler-Gilbert Community College is in Chandler, Arizona, as we showed you, which is a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. Our institution is a 2-year institution. So students begin with us, get their foundation of general education courses. They receive a few courses in their major area of study, and then they move to a 4-year university to earn their baccalaureate in their field. So we are also an open classroom. So we have students, of course, with a variety of skills, skill levels, and we have students from 18 to 80. So it's, again, the idea of diversity. Plus, Maricopa County, which is where we are situated, has an incredibly diverse group of people. So in this particular class, we had 2 students who were from Vietnam. We had 1 student who was from Ecuador. We had another student, while though she was from there in Arizona, we have a not so unusual phenomena in the American Southwest of students who come from Spanish-speaking households, where it's difficult to ascertain necessarily what their first language is. They have both Spanish and English, but they are not completely competent in either. Yeah. And so it is a bit of a struggle for them. And then we had
the Navajo community.
Oh, and then we also had an American Indian student from the Navajo Nation. So she would also have English as her second language.
Okay, so we have basically given you some items to characterize the population. Now let's focus on the curriculum. So basically what we did was to design, look at this challenge, to design an 8-week COIL course on argumentative writing, okay? The course for Mickey was called Composition 1.
First year
composition. And in my master's, it was an elective course that was called Academic Writing and Intercultural Education. So if you start thinking about how in the world we could do this match, we found naturally points in common, such as the ones that you're seeing on the screen. So our main goal when I received the invitation through my International Affairs Office to see if I had anything to offer in my curriculum corresponding to academic writing. I say, yes, I have a module, but I think that I can extend it. So I use this opportunity, and this is where I would start recommending you designers of curriculum to start looking at all of these opportunities that can be intertwined in the curriculum, and you say, this is where the magic can happen. This is what I want my curriculum to be personalized or flexible or, you know, adapted to a new experience. So I started seeing and compiling a set of elements which now translate to competences, and I sent that, Mickey revised it, the partner made our match, and then we started the experiment, because at the beginning it was an experiment. It was the first time that we made COIL at the master's, and my master's program. And for Mickey, as you naturally see, it wasn't the first adventure. So it was interesting to put two courses, one graduate level, one undergraduate level, very multi-diverse, yeah. And I hopefully towards the end we can just have a word with Monica from her experience now. We have her live, and these are some of the things. I'm not going to just go in each one of them because we don't have time. If not, we can just talk here for hours about COIL. But the idea was to see from the language, right, aspect, from the linguistic aspect, from the cultural aspect, and from the social cultural component, to generate the competences or to achieve the learning goals that we want. I forgot to tell you, but I will, you know, now that I would, before getting to this, the final product, remember our positioning that we stated that we believe in challenge-based experiences, in project-based learning. So this was an opportunity to put them into practice. And I know that here our lovely Angelica, and I know Juan Rodrigo and many other people, and even Pineda, Dr. Pineda, who have been working at the instructional design level with project-based, with flipped learning approaches. So this was a very nice opportunity to put them, to put the puzzle together, as I tell my students. So if the policy was experiential learning, naturally, so my students would remember COIL and many other theoretical background information that I will basically share in a minute. The main writing themes. So remember, and now I'm bringing you to the curriculum itself, right? So the main writing themes, we wanted to naturally, we had to make an agreement, because my master's, as you know, similar to your master's here at the Universidad de Antioquia, is focused on teaching English. Mine is teaching English. You have another FOSI as well. But I wasn't going to tell Mickey's students, oh yeah, let's come and work about teaching English. They would not be interested in that, because none of them is doing a major, right, in that. So we came with some writing themes to actually broaden their horizons, cognitively and metacognitively speaking, intercultural communications and business and healthcare. And they created a multimedia essay in argumentative essay. Monica is assenting because she's remembering how much she suffered with that. No, I'm kidding. In a platform that it's very recommended. I don't know if Juan Rodrigo and Jorge, who are very expert in this field, know about the Medium platform. It is a very versatile platform that allows you to integrate text, video, and well, many other resources, right? Mickey has a little bit of more experience with Medium than myself. So additional resources, what did we provide? Okay, there we started making magic, because none of the institutions, we couldn't have a common platform due to many restrictions, mainly bureaucratic restrictions, double factor authentication. I don't know if here in Antioquia you have that, but in my institution, you have to make autenticación de doble factor and get, you know, your students situated in a class. So you have to make a series of procedures which took time, right? So my platform in the university is Microsoft Teams, and in Mickey's is Canvas. My students couldn't get into Canvas, to make the story short, and their students couldn't make in Teams. So we spent, because I would say not invested. We spent, not to say wasted, more than 3 weeks trying to make it happen, because again, coming to my initial debate, institutionally, we are still working on that, right? So we decided to go Zoom, right? And since we went through Zoom, Zoom is for video conferences, as you know, we didn't have a common platform, so students needed to have additional, their additional, spaces to, to deal with their agreements with when is that they're meeting, how is that they were doing it. They created their own Google Docs and things like that. So this is also a challenge, okay? Thank you. I have already talked about that. And many of our students even message via WhatsApp. And one of the challenges before introducing this was time zones, and like all of the agreements that they had to make and things like that. The days of the week, some students, everybody almost was working, right?
Yeah.
So things like that. So thank you.
Go past this.
Yeah, I think that we just pass it. Thank you. Yeah.
So in creating our curriculum, as Liliana mentioned, before we were even paired, we exchanged our syllabus so we could see where we might have alignment in some common learning outcomes or objectives. And that is sort of where we began, so that we were then able to go from there and do a backward design to see what do we need to do then to get students to this point. And there had to be an element of compromise. And I think, as Liliana and I both said, this is, and maybe some other of you who have had experience can confirm this, there's a little bit of ego check at the door. It can't all be about your class, your ideas, your student learning outcomes. There needs to be compromise. And so one of the things, for example, that we compromised on is that students in freshman composition, that first year class, don't typically start in argumentative writing. That's in a second semester class. But I also felt confident that we could bring the students to that level, or at least provide them that challenge. Some more successful than others, but still that was part of where we created design together. And that's an absolute key to doing a successful COIL, is to be willing to do that. So you could go ahead and go to the next one. As we mentioned, it was an 8-week COIL course. And so we have our first stage, which we call week 0. This is when we're still interacting with our own students. And this is where we, in our separate classes with our own students, start introducing them to what virtual exchange might be, what is culture, what does intercultural communications look like, and these types of things, so we could get them prepared. Here is an example of one of the preliminary homework assignments we had them do. It was in Google Slides that we shared with everybody, and students gave a little something about themselves and included a picture so they could kind of see each other before we began with our first virtual meeting. So you can see some of the fun stuff. So again, I'm sorry, we gave them a little mini list, that we took a look at things like the cultural iceberg so they could get a sense of, it's a lot of fun to have that initial 10% of learning a culture, right? Food, which we have talked nonstop about since I've been here, and I've eaten my weight in empanadas. But also, reminding them that 90% of a culture is below the surface. What types of values do people hold? What's the place of families? What is the religious context in these types of things? So we try to introduce them to that a little bit. And actually, we recorded videos from ourselves. To read the class ahead of time. So these mini exercises. Should I keep going, or did you want to say something? I think that we can just comment on this, that our policy, again, was argumentation, right? We wanted them to get on more practice, in the case of my students and Miki's students, on the rhetorical structure. So we emphasize from weeks 1 to 3 on concepts such as authorial voice, empathetic listening, intercultural communication, differences and challenges. So they were gradually moving towards the plateau in culture, and also in the analysis of language and in the production of language, although they were not grouped at that point. This is just one of our, we thought it would be fun to share one of the cultural, again, it is that top 10% of the cultural iceberg, but it's still sometimes kind of fun to share these things. One of the other assignments the student did was share a favorite dish, or a dish that was a traditional dish. So you can see the variety of here. For example, the blue corn mush is from our Native American student. So that kind of gives a little bit of a different glimpse into America as not just hamburgers, although there is a lot of that.
we have arepa right there.
Yes, yes. So it was a lot of fun.
Who made that, Monica? Do you remember who made that? Is it you? No. Okay. Empanadas, you see, you can just, and then we have bastimento llanero. I bet that Edilberto made it, and ropa vieja, I don't remember. I think that it was, no, I don't remember exactly. It was, yeah, you're right. Yes. You're right, ropa vieja. It's very, very, yeah.
And so then clearly, once they propose their topic, they're in their groups. This is where we move through that writing process. We try to spend most of the class time with the groups, being able to work with one another. We also, this is where we came in to coach and mentor them. We would often go into the groups during that class time to provide feedback on what was happening in the group, not just at the teamwork element, which sometimes had to be addressed, but also, of course, where they were in their writing process and in their voice and argumentative structure. Go ahead. You did a beautiful job on this. Why don't you?
Yeah.
Her beautiful appearance.
So if you want to picture how everything was integrated, perhaps, well, now it's taking the shape of a pyramid, but then in the future, perhaps it's a puzzle, perhaps, another artifact will be created from these experiences. So as you see, there was a submission of the final publishable version of essay and class meeting. And then it ended, everything ended with a 3-minute pitch in which we agreed that students needed to present their arguments in 3 minutes. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that structure. It's super nice. I totally recommended it to you. So they really needed to, remember, like in a pitch, simulated a Shark Tank, they have to present their arguments and invite the audience and persuade the audience to read the paper that they have created, okay? Lots of peer workshops, as Nikki was saying, and naturally, they conference with each group on the rough draft. That would be like the picture of the 3 things. Well, I think that today we're not going to, unfortunately, have the time to talk about the research that is derived from this process, but I will let you see this roadmap, how we have called it. We have some preliminary gains, which will be continuing variables to be analyzed in this project. One is the increased awareness of cultural values. Another is the different teaching styles and the fusion of knowledges. And I will let Miki tell an anecdote that we have with this in a moment. Another is an increased feelings of inclusion, right? Especially this, by the time that this iteration took place, was very, very beneficial for students who were secluded due to COVID. So this was also a practical element that we have to make sure that we included in our papers and now in our conferences to talk about that. And the 2 last ones are socializing again, similar to these 2 things, socializing again, turning fears down. Oh, people exist after COVID. Yeah, I know lots of things, happened, family losses, burdens, fear to go outside, all of the things that, my maniac, technique and a tendency to clean everything with alcohol and all of that. That's what we all lived. That's an example, and they could talk about how are you managing solitude, how are you managing anxiety, how are things happening in your institutions and things like that, how is the policy of masks, and many different situations were analyzed from the lens of our students. And a concept that evolved from the data, and you students remember, this is a grounded theory approach. We are doing a qualitative and exploratory qualitative study at this stage. We discovered that the concept of cultural agility is one of the most interesting variables that we now are going to investigate in the second iteration. We are recognizing new styles and methods because we are, again, coming to our initial argument. we are on a renaissance point. Without, while Jorge passes the slides, I let Miki tell the little anecdote about our students' perceived differences in our teaching styles and methodologies. So I can tell you to pass while Miki does this. Go next.
Of course, we had students write reflections after
We
the
don't have time for
experience
that.
so that we could have that little insight. And what was, I think,
All
an
of the
interesting
methods.
point for the students, especially the American students, is we do have a tendency, I'll be honest with you, to be perhaps more empathetic than we need to be. I don't know if that's something you all
After
experience here or not.
There's no
I
time.
think we tendency to have a real soft landing for them. I love the fact that Liliana and I have different teaching styles, because I think the blend kind of creates this beautiful sense of the diversity they're experiencing during the class. And many students commented on the fact that we had such diverse styles. So I'm beginning to feel the way we've been talking about it. It almost is starting to feel like good cop, bad cop.
No.
But I don't think it's that far.
No, I'm not the bad. Please, Miki, if not, you go on the plane by yourself.
No, but what I loved about Liliana's style is that she held them accountable. You know, she really challenged them and asked them questions that really made them step up and address things in a more challenging manner. And so I was really happy that my students got to experience these different styles, so that, you know, it's kind of that idea as they go out into the world that, you know, you're not always going to have that soft landing, which our school has a tendency to promote sometimes, you know, in order to retain them and help them get more confident in the world of education.
Perhaps.
Sort of a scaffolded approach. But I love the fact that they got to have that interaction with the two of us in our different styles. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, but just to clarify to the people in the audience, I'm not the backup. Okay. Okay. No, it was a challenge. I have to confess that it was a challenge. And later, you know, don't think that this is, you know, out of the sudden, all of these reflections appear out of the sudden. In fact, I apologize because we had to skip many of them, which is the research part, because there is no time. But it was a challenge for me because although they looked like they were at the same age of my students, they were younger, right? So the age difference became a factor. Naturally, I am not used to train undergrads. So the tendency is what? To treat everybody equally and push everybody equally. And in my mind, I have to confess, and that's why I opened the debate, because it's a very interesting variable. Everybody was able to do everything. So I didn't say, oh yeah, you come from Chandler, Arizona, you're not going to do this anymore. No, everybody was like mapped up to do the things, even though I knew they were younger. But the good thing about this and the beauty, and please, Monica, correct me if it didn't happen that way. The beauty was that my master's students also had to cope up with the abilities of managing students who were under their age. I mean, like a comparison, you know, not they were not underage. I don't want to make that confusion, but they had to exercise their mentoring skills, and naturally they were English teachers. They are about to graduate. So they had to know how to deal with, but from another perspective. Not only a little bit of mentoring, I would say, because that is another very good element, but they had to really be part and make the others part of the group. And just to tell you, because we skipped lots of the results, one among the many beauties of the project is that my students, not only my students were, not all of my students were leaders in their groups. We formed like 8 or 7 groups, I don't remember. But in some groups, it was the youngsters leading the elders, if I may say, in a comparison now that we're talking about age. It was not my master's students leading the other, it was the other way around. I remember one of your, I'm so bad with names, I remember one of your great students telling Alberto and telling the others what to do. So that was a very interesting match. I had to confess again that I thought that it was going to be, I had a big stereotype about that. I say, oh my God, how is this experiment? Because it's graduate, it's the age different, you know, many factors, but thanks God, it worked fine. We talked about this. Yeah, go ahead.
So to add to the challenges, again, by no means did everything go perfectly. We know
Yeah.
that it was, one of the beginnings, and we definitely have identified several things that we're going to change the second time around. For example, we were the ones to create the groups last time. This time we're allowing a little more time for interaction. That's partially because we have the technology figured out this time, so we won't lose time to that. And we think the students will be more empowered by making those connections themselves and forming groups with each other. So that's an example of something that we're going to do differently this time. And hopefully that sense of empowerment and common ground that they might be sharing with each other in breakout groups will allow them to form those. So I think that's probably one of the big ones, is so that we have more success with that, people who might have similar time constraints and those kinds of things. So I think they'll be able to plan their time better perhaps in the group. So little things like that I think will help with that teamwork.
And one thing that you may consider doing is, based on our experience, we can recommend that you really let the students work on their own, but also observe them, because it's in our interest to see and to make the interaction happening between Colombians and students from the United States, or from the many different places, as Miki was picturing. So what to do next? We'll have, you have your sign is over there. We naturally, for the bonds that tie me to this university, I'm here with my colleague here to share this experience. So I really hope that you take this into consideration in your agendas, because it's a topic that it's worth considering, and it is not only of importance for the curriculum of your institutions, but for the global curriculum in the development of the sustainable goals and the global learning opportunities. We are making partners with National University. We've been, as I said, I took Miki on Wednesday. We had a wonderful conversation and tour with the International Relations Affairs Office. And in this new iteration of the course, we have already made available some seats for undergrads from Universidad Nacional de La Plata. So our coil is growing. As I said, the baby is already growing. So we are not only having students from Colombia, but we're having a few students from Argentina, and naturally we're having Miki's students. Apart from that, what are we working on? We are naturally assessing the experience, planning this part of experiences, coming here to Universidad de Antioquia, going to Nacional, sitting down all the week. We've been sitting down with my colleagues at Universidad de La Sabana, discussing about this, planning new iterations like the one that I'm saying, thinking about the possibility even of faculty training, which is one of the biggest things that I think that Miki and I recap from this week. Reflecting and doing, disseminating and learning as any student, because we are students as well. I think that we can just go, because I have addressed. We're working with Miki on the design of, I wouldn't be that risky and say it's a model, perhaps the design of a couple of recommendations, a working model, an appealing structure, let's put it that way, to recommend teachers to be smart when implementing this type of solutions, but be or make use of the equitable and the opportunities that the universities provide to them.
And I will say, based on many of the things that we've already learned this week from other institutions and some similar faculty gatherings, I think we already have several ideas about how we might even rearrange that model now that we're getting some really useful feedback. So as again, it's a working model, but we're seeing how we might be able to more effectively inform instructors on sort of the pathway, the journey to creating the COIL exchange if they're interested.
And then we have a series of skills, and perhaps this tied with the recommendations in these last few minutes that we have left. Be resilient to change, be adaptable, be flexible as a teacher, as an instructor, and also as a designer. Be open to learn, team up with IT technology fellows, so they will always help you troubleshoot. Be flexible to adaptations, constantly assess, right? Be able to negotiate with your partner certain alignments. That's why the name of the conference is on top of the agenda, and naturally be able to troubleshoot and relax, because anything can happen when you are in a time zone difference situation with a variable, we have explained. Imagine, naturally, we don't have time to go on that, but there are thousands of things that can happen as we experience the first 3 weeks.
And and to build upon that, the fact that when those things happen, that you and instructors can try to model that problem solving for the students in that moment, hopefully, so that when they come into their own moment with that, they can, use this as a model of, you don't freak out, you don't panic, you don't shut down. You keep a good attitude, you try to work through it.
It's hard. It's hard, but
flexible.
then I before going, if you want to go to the next slide, remember that it was like the third or the fourth week. Mickey was in high flex over there in Arizona. So she was in her room, but look at the situation, picture it simply. She was in her room, I was at home working, my students were online, no problem. But Mickey's systems and infrastructure was not as promised, right? Or as expected, let's put it that way. So she had to pay attention to her students physically in the room, talking, microphones all the time, the video, the sound, plus her students who were online. So I felt panic for Miki because she was stressed out and she had to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, momentum at the same time. Well, I couldn't do anything. I was like, it's okay, guys. We're gonna be starting in a few minutes.
You
and
do a
things
lot
like
of
that.
this.
So,
smile and smile through it.
I know, and I was like, okay, let's give Dr. Mercy a moment and blah, blah, blah. But she had to leave the high flex plus the online, and it was difficult. So don't think that this is, all of the marvels, all of the adventures. It was tough.
Well, and I will say, when we went fully online for both classes, so my foot, it was smooth. It was beautiful.
It was smooth.
Yeah, it was really nice. So lesson learned.
Okay, I think that was the end, right? Excellent. Thank you very much. And we are open to questions.
Comments,
so Dr. Pineda, you can just start the debate.
If you have any questions, we need a microphone.
Okay, good.
So
you can take
if anyone has a question. Okay.
First of all, thank you for sharing this beautiful experience. I guess we all have learned a lot. And I have like 3 questions, 2. In one of the slides, it said that the writing themes were intercultural communication in business and in healthcare. Yes. So why did you choose those topics or themes?
So what we did is we had a small library for the students where we had 2 or 3 texts. And when I use the word text, I mean, it could be a podcast, a documentary, an academic journal, a more popularized journal. In those, we had one library folder for intercultural communication in business and another library folder for intercultural communication in health and medicine. We chose number 1, intercultural communication, as the overall theme, since they were working in an intercultural communication situation. And we thought that those were kind of 2 decent classic sub areas to go into. And so once students read or watched to create a little bit of a foundation of intercultural communication in health or in business, then from there, the group could construct and decide what direction they wanted to go with that and what topic of interest or the issue that they wanted to pursue within that. And then they, from there, did the research. Did that answer your question?
And actually, I may compliment that I didn't want to give my students the same topics that they have been studying in the master's program. So for me, it was also an opportunity to enrich the curriculum with other diverse topics that they weren't necessarily, but that in their lifelong learning opportunity, they will need them. And naturally, I didn't want to put Mickey's students to learn about TESOL, to learn about languages. I think that, and now with all of the, the resources that we put in the folders, plus the research, they not only use the resources from the folders, they use additional resources from databases, from video clips, from YouTube. Since the product was multimodal, So it was a very nice digital literacy experience, if I may say, and coin a couple of terms.
Anyone else?
Well, I go with my second question. Okay, when you were talking about the leadership and skills that they develop, and how the students that were from your context were like the leaders, maybe that was something that you associated with the language of instruction and language of interaction, since ones are Colombian students with the native language Spanish and yours were native speakers of English.
I love that suggestion and question. And I think that, would you like to come do some research with us on that? I think that would be something that would be very interesting for us to take a little closer look at. Because again, we had groups in which the students were, I think, really looking up to their Colombian master student counterpoint and really allowed them to take the lead. And then there, like we said, there was another group or two where for some reason, again, we don't know how that evolved, but that is something we should look at more carefully. The American undergraduate had somehow ended up kind of taking the lead. I am thinking in the one of the groups that happened, I think what you're saying could have been a variable, because that was one of the students that I would say was perhaps less confident in his speaking skills.
Yeah, and I also have one student.
I forgot, I think it is
that I will not try to protect her identity, but was struggling with the leveling up of English proficiency. Although she was confident, there was, let's say, a misalignment in the group because of other factors. It was not language, but language, we wouldn't say, this is in our preliminary findings, but I wouldn't say that language was a barrier. I would rather say language was mostly a vehicle and it was achieved, right? It was the means. But I don't think that it was like in our first iteration, I may say, linguistic barriers were minimal, but yes, it existed, just to answer your question.
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
I think that it does come with the fear and with the unconfidence, let's say.
Yeah, lack of confidence.
To be exposed to a real situation. And Alberto was mentioning that on Wednesday. We had a nice conversation with my students at the master's course on Wednesday night. And he was saying at the beginning, Doctor, I didn't understand what he was saying, right? So, and Alberto teaches at one prestigious university here, has a vast experience, but I think that it comes with the fear, but it would be very interesting to analyze that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. We have one question from the people on YouTube. Marta Pulido says that we have in this university, we have a very similar strategy, which is classes espejo or something like mirror classes with the same vocation, with the same objective. La profe Marta wants to know how we can implement COIL since we have the will to do it, and how are these COIL evaluated?
How they're created.
So the question, just to rephrase it.
The question is, number one is how we can implement COIL since we have all the will to do it.
Okay.
So
and in terms of assessment and evaluation, how can we evaluate the implementation?
Okay, good.
Oh, wow, those are both good questions. Which one should I?
I can do the second one and you go first.
Well, the first one, I hate to ask this, but if you could go back about, I don't know, 20 slides.
Oh my God.
If I'm understanding correctly, I believe they're asking how to establish one, how to find a partner, is my understanding. And
because they have already been doing mirror classes. So I understand, I don't know, understand quite correctly, but I think that what Martha wants to know is now that they are doing mirror, what's the next step perhaps? What's the next step that now that they have the equipment and the possibility to do it? They have already started with mirror classes.
I might have to let you take that because I don't know what mirror classes
Okay,
are.
good. Not a problem. So that is one of the main things. So we'll have to see, Martha, and thank you for your question. We'll have to see to what extent are mirror classes managed by the instructors. So we'll have to start by like really characterizing what's happening in the mirror classes. Is it that instructors are teaming up synchronously? How many times? How is the content distributed, and how are these things? Because again, coming to our initial argument, virtual exchange and COIL opportunities need to be effective, and this is one of the critiques that we make to the system. To be effective, they need to be very, very systematically designed and intertwined. So you have all of the variables connected and matched. My question goes to you, and then we can just work it together. So if your mirror classes, I mean, this is a very great point of departure, are going well, you'll have just to need to sit down in the curriculum. I mean, sit down and think about in the curriculum, how is that your mirror, or how are your mirror classes moving into a systematic and sustainable COIL opportunity? Because I don't know, and this is just for a lack of knowledge, how is Martha doing with the synchronous component? Are they, do they have a co-teaching moments? Do they have classes that meet at the same time? Or does it happen, how much of the curriculum, or how much, let's look at the two variables, how much happens synchronously, how much happens asynchronously? Any formula is okay, I would say, and I hate to give generalizations, but I think that one curriculum doesn't fit all, right? So you'll have to really analyze, capitalizing on your experience. I would rather invite you to sit down and see, well, in the mirror classes, what's happening, to see that we can capitalize in a systematic COIL, I would say, or to respond to the first one.
I can start on the second, and then you can
Good.
add,
Yeah, sure.
from your perspective as well. Of course, you know, an important component is that you need to have measurable outcomes. Of course, we're all in that assessment cycle. And the way we ended up handling it is we created, again, a set of common student learning outcomes and objectives that still kept within the integrity of our separate classes. But these are the ones we were hoping the students would find in this shared experience. We did create a set of rubrics as the best we could to measure how students demonstrated those skills in their final paper and in their pitch. And we both commented on those. So we did an integrated approach to the grading. And students ended up receiving the same grade in both of our classes, or we agreed upon in the rubric our final evaluation levels on them. And I think hopefully the students throughout sort of understood what expectations we had in the level that they demonstrated and what skills we were looking for. And so we used that and then took it to our own institutional, whatever assessment requirements our own institution had, and integrated those results into our own different methods of assessment.
Yeah, so
I hope that begins to answer some of Marta's questions.
I think so. And also that the rubric was co-designed.
Yes.
Right? Like all the instruments that we use, the pitch was co-designed, the rubrics were co-designed. So we maintain, as Mickey mentioned, Mickey's course was 16 weeks. Mine was 8 weeks. So what Mickey did was invite us to her class during these 8 weeks. But as she says, the grades produced in these 8 weeks were equally, you know, I mean, distributed. So that is the grade, and naturally she would receive, or she would have additional grades for the other 8 weeks that she was with her students. But students in the groups were assessed, you know, equally. And if Marta is asking also how to assess this kind of experiences, naturally, a good way to do it is, also be sustainable and be systematic. Even after our classes, finished, we have been meeting every week, take notes about our research, take notes about the changes in the curriculum. So I guess that once you get into these projects, in order to let them live, if I may say, you need to be sustainable as well.
We have time for last one question.
Well, what a nice little thing. Hi. Well, thank you very much for sharing this very nice experience and that big job you're doing, which is absolutely great. And I just wanted to participate because I've been suffering an experience with one of my advisees from the master's program. She really wanted to get into, telecollaboration and a telecollaboration project. And what she wanted as a research question was kind of determining the kind of intercultural communication things based upon Byram that happens in this kind of exchanges. Okay, that was the research question. However, at the beginning, and just to confirm what you're saying, this is not just that I just want to do it and tomorrow I can start. I mean, this needs planning, this needs, and we learned it the hard way. We got absolutely, we got 3 teachers, I think one from Japan, from different places, but the difference in timings, they were getting up, we were going to bed. So, I mean, just to shorten the story, it didn't work. Now she's working with another kind of project, which has to do with international collaboration and exchanges, but she got to engage into a project that was already going on from the SENA, Centro Nacional de Aprendizaje, which is a government institution here. And now she's working, she's doing fine. They're having written exchanges concerning cultural things, intercultural things, and it's working fine. There's a professor who's in charge of that, and he allowed her to be as part of the project, and she's taking her data for later writing the thesis project. We're on that, but this needs it's wonderful. It's a very nice experience, but COIL, first I think it needs the commitment of the institutional commitment from the 2 perspectives. I mean, from the 2 sides, right? Or the 3 or the many they want to participate. And then there must be this, I don't know, compare curriculum. That's what you called it. I mean, like, see if my needs fit into your needs and vice versa, so that we can have like common grounds and common interests. In one of the experiences, for example, with those guys in Japan, they didn't care about Colombian culture. I mean, it was interesting because our students were very happy asking questions, but not so much the other way around, and things like those. So just to point out that this COIL, I think that if we are going to embrace, which we are, and I'm also very interested for my classes and for the licenciatura program, the BA program we have in arts here and languages. It would be very nice to have it, but it needs planning, and I think that we need to take it as part of the curriculum, not as a complement to it.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. As we do with ICT, we need to normalize these kinds of things. We need to normalize ICT and make it normal part of the curriculum, not just as an asset or something that will work if, but something that has to work whenever.
Absolutely.
Yes? And so that's it. I'm very glad that you came with this experience. That gave me lots of lights. I'm going to call my student right away to tell, hey, why didn't you come to?
But not today on a Friday.
Well, but
Why aren't you here?
But I think, really thank you for sharing that. I think you've pointed out so many important things. I have to say that number one, that's great. Maybe Liliana and I could come and do a training. little self-promotion of what we're hoping to expand upon in future iterations. But you're absolutely right. It's so important that there's a connection and that there is a process. We met for 12 weeks, every week, once a week, before the class began. We took a lot of time and effort and planning and rethinking and coming up with ideas and then scratching those ideas, coming up with new ones. It was a process and it should not be taken lightly, as you said.
Yeah.
If it's going to have integrity and provide the students with a wonderful experience. And again, we recognize we had some challenges and some failures, absolutely. And Monica's not going to mention them because she wants to keep her A. So
she will.
No, but we recognize this, and that is why
she graduated already. She graduated already,
and that's why we
that is the one that hasn't graduated yet. No, but you're right.
Exactly. It is time consuming. It takes a certain kind of instructor. I think we're the first to admit this is not for everyone.
Yeah, that's
and I think that's
what I
say.
One size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
And I think that as administrators, we have here the director of the masters, and many people of the audience perhaps play a stakeholder role. You need to identify in your teams your leaders. You probably the people who are could coach and could mentor the other professors or team members. So it is included and normalized in the agenda. I love that, Juan Rodrigo. I make sure that we will quote you with this normalized idea, but also because it is something that if you analyze in the strategic plan of the university is there, but how to descend it from there and how to make everybody understand. Perhaps we have to make a metaphor of the iceberg and knowing what it is embedded in a core project. But I think that just to close with that, because time is over and I would love to keep talking about this, but perhaps on another visit to Medellin, we can keep, or when you visit me in Bogota, well, in Chia, more than welcome. So we can continue the debate and we can continue learning and coiling together. Thank you very much to the people in the audience, the ones who were connected on a Friday afternoon, the ones that made it today. Special thanks to my 2 students who are supporting their teachers and my great colleagues that you see in the audience. And thank you to you, Jorge, for the invitation as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and thank you for the ones in the audience on behalf of the master's program in foreign language teaching and learning. Okay,